Hi, I'm Seamless, and today I'm going to show you how to make this sound. Using Phase Plant. Phase Plant was given me by these guys, Kilohertz. We have a website for all their stuff and whatever. You should check them out because this thing is really good. I'm going to do an actual in-depth review soon, but for the time being, let's talk about how this guy was made. So, Phase Plant's whole deal is that you got this kind of analog synth section that's pretty well analog in a sense that you can modulate a lot of stuff audio rate. And then you have over here this kind of this built-in effects section that's actually kind of a built-out version of another plugin that they have called Multipass, which is about frequency splitting things into a whole bunch of lanes. And then here we just have the lanes. And in this example that I got here, I'm pretty sure I'm using some premium plugins. Like this Slice EQ, I'm pretty sure is just actually just by itself a regular plugin because it is really expensive. It'd be something that's just a built-in dude. But this could just not all be here for all I cared, because to be honest, what's happening in here is the important thing. So let's break it down. So this sound is built up of lane 1 and lane 2 being the main sound and sub. Here's what the sub sounds like. One and 2 lanes are both going to lane 3, which is coming out to the master, and lane 3's got going on a minor amount of EQ and some limiting with this LFO thing going on the release time. The LFO is a sort of extra modulation. It's not really meant to be one of those rhythmic things that you change speed. It's kind of meant to go exactly this fast because I needed some amount of motion to go on per note. Could have just used an envelope, but I don't know, LFOs. Anyway, and then the main guy. That's what he sounds like without the effects. And that's these guys up here. So the way this whole stuff works is that it gives just groups. It has essentially the class of things that can be here, and here they all are. And you get a group, and then in the group, an audio signal path can begin. And so the groups that I have here, this guy, for example, this is the sub, is going out to lane 2. This is the sine wave that's going into being distorted, and just to give it that extra couple of harmonics. And then that going out to lane 2, and then lane number 1 has this whole deal, which begins as a sample of a Wurlitzer, I think, that's being FM'd and then also AM'd by, actually I guess RM'd because it's bipolar, by another oscillator, which is being modulated by another oscillator. And that's just, you hear that description of what just happened there and why I'm excited. So let's undo some things here. So, and then this other group is actually a copy of this oscillator coming out to be its own modulator. I might not have needed to do that. I think I would have because of the output. So I gotta put output down here because then like this output's going out, but then it would have taken the whole chain as being like the total audio path that would have gone out to the sideband, which is doing stuff in the effects chain. We'll talk about when we get there. Anyway, so top dude here. This is the phase target, right? So these green handles, you grab one and then you can modulate a parameter. And right now, we started with this guy. So he's modulating the phase, and phase is basically FM. And by basically, I mean completely. Digital FM synthesizers are done by modulating phase. And that's what he sounds like without the FM going on. But of course, he is also being modulated to level, and I believe it's by this guy. Yeah, yep. No, but that's actually this guy. The level of this guy is being modulated by this guy. And then on top of that, actually he is being modulated by this guy. Wavetable. Can I rename these? I might be able to. Anyway, wavetable dude. This is what it sounds like without that. Of course, we're being distorted too, and look at that. I'm also modulating the drive of the distortion, which is sine folding. So we're sine folding it, and we're also modulating the sine folding drive, plus modulating the level. Because remember, level increases drive, which increases the modulation of a distortion module. So all of this kind of intermodulation going on, and that's contributing to the texture. And that's how this sound began. Also, a really great undo and redo control, so I don't have to really worry about what percentages I'm doing in case I screw everything up. So that's big. It's weird that this thing actually has a lot of built-in stuff that actually makes it easy for me to show it off, like the mix knobs here and that kind of thing. Like I can really turn a whole bunch of stuff off, and which is what I need to do when I'm showing off. I like to do parts of things because I need to like listen to stuff at the stages of the phase, the signal chain. Anyway, so on top of that, another thing I really love about this plugin is just how visual it is when you do all that stuff, because it has an effect on the shape of the waveform. And typically, at least for me, I'm usually focused on spectral shenanigans. I'm looking at like an EQ or something, or like a scope or whatever to see what the spectral like results of stuff is. But seeing this stuff happen like visually here is all super important, because then you can start to associate shapes of waveforms with tones, and super important for also when we do things like change phases or levels of modulators, modulating modulators. Like this guy over here, he's modulating a lot of stuff. Most importantly, though, he's modulating the level of this, which would have been a triangle wave on the guy. So that's this output, this guy coming over here and modulating this guy. And that's changing the shape of this. And that's also like, and then you see how this is sort of like a halfway between saw and square shape. And I determined that while I was doing this, modulating this wavetable, this default wavetable, which is just to scan through the basic waveforms. And just arrived here as being like cool. And if you really look at the shape and you looked at how it sounded while it was moving around, it actually starts to make a pretty good sense as to why it sounded good when we got to this position. And then you can start to make informed choices about what we're doing later. Yeah, on top of that, this is the dude that's modulating the drive, I think. Yes. And independently, so he's modulating this guy and he's modulating the other guy. Like this guy is modulating this guy, but he's being modulated by this guy. So this dude is like the root modulation of everything, which is also why, after having done all this to this stuff, the next step was to make this modulator output, which is this aux thing. And the way the auxes work is you take them out, and then you get yourself an output like this guy. Bam. Every one of these outputs can be something that can modulate, and you can even modulate chains that would be feedback. You can also modulate the thing's own phase, which is just a straight up feedback, like the same module's own deal. But you can also modulate a modulator, like you can modulate a source that's above the modulator that is the source, so that it feeds back onto itself. And that's where some stuff gets super broken, and like in the best way. Not something we're doing right now, but and like I've done a lot of experiments that came out with some pretty similar results as what happens in the same situations and like what I have in my actual hardware synthesizers. So that's like super good. Anyway, you grab your handle, and then you come to where over here it says this, and you go whew. And if you think about it, it's actually really neat. This thing is modulating just like it would modulate the rest of the other like wave shaper parameters. It's modulating this like just this flatness and in the level, and that's exactly what it would do. That's exactly what he would do if you modulated a zero signal by this guy plus or minus. It's just what a signal is, and that's makes pretty good sense. And then you put it out afterwards, and you tell it to go to sideband, and it goes to the sideband. Why is it important that it went to the sideband? Well, let's talk about the mix and our effects here. So. This is just a high pass. We can get rid of it for now. Yeah. Actually, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna I'm gonna undo this. Even it undoes the. That's weird. All right. So I think if I do like that. Cool. So this flanger effect is cool. So the flanger and the chorus, not so much the phaser. They're all sort of delay-based effects, which is important because the actual delay unit in here doesn't go down far enough. There's also a resonator. So there's a lot of different ways to get like similar results. But what's neat about this dude is that he gives control in a unique way of like not just the delay parameters that control like the result that's going to give us, but also like it can move it around at phase, but you can move it all around at once. So you can create this kind of like growing width situation in a like of what would be a flanging result, which is like not like how a flanger usually moves. So, and then on top of that, we're modulating feedback, the stereo spread, and then the mix, so that we're getting only one half of it going on at one time. Because usually only that's the only half that sounds good. You know what I mean? And then undo and wait, let's hear it. Super subtle, kind of like just phase icing. Call it that. Here's the next one, and here's what he sounds like. That brings us to this dude, the Ensemble. I don't know if he's a basic plugin either, but he's basically like a really specific like phaser chorusy thing that actually sounds pretty decent, like in terms of like the stuff it does. I usually leave it on its sort of basic parameter, like, and up to all the voices, and then use the mix because it's a really heavy plugin, like a really heavy result. So that tends to be how I like to use it as like a touch of stuff because it's really a very heavy effect. Do like this do menu. And that brings us to this dude, the phase distortion. This is where we're taking advantage of the sideband effect. Here's what it sounds like without the sideband. For a lot of reasons, and here's what it sounds like with the sideband. So let's break down what the hell is happening here. So this phase distortion module is basically a form of self FM. And then there's also the sideband option to make it FM by a different signal. And that's pretty much it. I say pretty much because I'm not 100% sure as to how it actually differs from literal FM. It might be some like all pass trickery, like for all I know. I'm not 100, I really just don't know. But the parameters that they give you access to make it seem pretty obvious. And essentially what you're doing is you're just taking whatever waveform you grab and you're imparting it onto the signal. And so let's talk about like my choices here about using this shape and talking about why this shape worked out when we were talking about like listening to its effect on things. And that's because this sort of result is very like phasey and deep and lots of like when you see big peaks moving around like that, that's lots of phase motion. Plus there's also just lots of peaks, which it translates to high frequency information kind of a lot. And then all of this stuff does is mess around with the phase again. And phase in this case is just basically being sharpness, because you heard what the sound like, without the stuff. Sharp as hell. And all the flanzers and the ensembles did was to smooth it all the hell up. But like it's hard to smooth the thing up without ruining the phase in a way that it's not just like crossfading between like with a sharpness and a not sharp. And parallel processing can get you pretty far, but it doesn't sound as good as when it feels like the smoothness also has a sharpness to it. So this lets us, this phase distortion, just put sharpness on stuff by putting sharp on stuff. And then you can gotta finagle with some things. The tone works out like initially just kind of just leaving it on max and then kind of whatever, but I find that it actually works out best when you kind of tune it to whatever frequency you're on. It feels like it matches up a little bit better. That's probably what it's for. And then there's also this normalize function, which does smooth it out if like you're getting like some of the darker tones are lower in level, helps bring them up, but sometimes it screws with how solid it feels dynamics wise. Spread is what it sounds like. Bias is what it sounds like. Like the bias is just moves where the center is, but not where the ends are, and that gives you kind of like an offset. And that's pretty much asymmetry right there. It's the word I was trying to think of. Jesus. Woo. And then of course the mix. And what's neat about the mix is that because this is phase distortion, when you parallel it like against the original signal, it phase cancels considerably, and it causes a really it's obviously phased effect. And in this case, the phased effect was the squelchy shit going on in our head, because you saw how either pole was a similar sounding kind of sharp. But like right around the middle, it gets us the squelchy kind of FM result. What's up with that? Well, like I was saying, what this whole process does is it re-imparts whatever, in this case, the source of this incredibly sharp saw square waveform. Saws and squares together, like unfiltered, it's sharp. And it's gonna come in here, and then on full blast, it does exactly what I said it does, really, really well. Well enough, in fact, that it's too sharp. It took away the actual the texture that I wanted to give to the thing completely. And then when you are paralleling it, it's phase canceling against those two signals, and I didn't totally expect the squelchy result, but again, having looked at it all, seeing it all happen, it actually makes sense that that's the result, because it's true that the two poles are two different kinds of sharp, but one was post having done all this, and another one was in the original source. So it's kind of like it's capping, like through phase cancellation, like a phase cancellation burger, where like this thing is the bun on both sides. It's just freaky. I love this plugin. I love this synth a lot. I've spent like a whole bunch of time with it, not like a lot, and like everything I'm doing with it is just like new kinds of gold. It's just good. Anyway, I'll put up this preset to download in the description. I'm having a patcher, but I'm not doing anything with it because I didn't need to. If you have any questions about it, please let me know. Thanks for Kilohertz for giving me the plugin. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And as usual, have a nice day. Yeah.